so wait, the goalpost moved a bit there. With
Hold
the propaganda. Wait, hold on. I just want to be clear.
The whole point was
No, wait, Michael.
Michael.
Michael. We're talking. Wait, Michael. No. Wait, Michael. Whoa. I'm sorry. Wait, Michael. I am unwilling. Wait, Michael. No, Michael.
0% of you are subscribed. Fix that.
Howdy.
Hey.
So yeah, I guess the main issue, I mean, to just sort of get right to it, is that it seems like right now you post something upwards of 4,000, maybe 5,000 tweets a day that are all essentially
not quite that many, but I'll admit that I've been a bit involved.
I'm a live streamer. I'm in no position to judge. Say perhaps for their content, because they're always like the Russian line, right? So to be clear, my issue here is not for itself the alignment of your points. It's that
okay, good. Well, that's good to establish, actually.
It's that almost everything that you've said on Twitter that I have seen has been wrong. The fact that it lines up with the propaganda. Wait, hold on, because I just want to be clear. I'm happy to talk about any of these things individually. Okay, this is a correlative thing. Putin lies all the time. Of course, warring governments are bound to be somewhat distrustful, regardless of their general moral disposition. But in this case, like, these are fairly big lies, you know? And you kind of understanding that the logical conclusion of saying America shouldn't provide arms to Ukraine would have been like, well, maybe we shouldn't have gotten involved in World War II as well. Which,
well, I don't say that exactly, but I know what you're getting at.
No, you said everything but that, right? You said like, well, maybe the Jews could have lived if we hadn't invaded, which is like kind of...
No, that's not what I said at all. We can get into that as well if you'd like, but that's not at all what I said.
Wait, out of curiosity, what did you say then? Because you were posting, I mean, it's not just one tweet.
My point,
do you think America should have intervened and participated in World War II?
Well, I mean, on World War II, and I'm not dodging the question. This is not just me deflecting. The whole reason why I even got into this World War II like sort of tangent was because I'm sure I don't have to tell you that, you know, pretty much 24/7 in discussions of Ukraine and Russia and U.S. policy in the war, the analogy of World War II is invoked, you know, this idea that World War II and U.S. intervention in World War II can just be blithely invoked, whatever the context, 80 years later, as this like paradigmatic example of absolute moral goodness. Because the reason why it's invoked in those sort of morally absolute terms is because you're supposed to import sort of like the moral contours of World War II to present day as providing this kind of like justificatory basis for why it would also be of comparable, you know, moral goodness to engage in interventionist policy.
I think the logic...
I think that's not a well-founded sort of historical analogization.
The logic is that it was good for America to intervene in World War II, and that it's also good for us to provide aid to Ukraine. And the only reason you would invoke that comparison here and indicate that it was not entirely good for us to intervene in World War II, I mean, the parallel here, since you oppose U.S. aid in Ukraine, if I understand you correctly, would that you don't want to, you think we shouldn't have intervened in World War II. So do you think we should have? Because if you think we should have intervened in World War II, then could I not just say, oh, well, then the parallel remains. Even if it was morally complicated, it's still good for us to provide aid to Ukraine.
Well, here's one of the key points that I make on exactly what you're raising. And it's interesting because most people don't seem to be very familiar with this history. And not only is it just interesting unto itself to familiarize yourself with, but it's actually very pertinent now and timely. So when people talk about U.S. intervention in World War II, you know, if you're not like a World War II historian, or you haven't done like a systematic review of the World War II related literature, and you just kind of consume popular conceptions of World War II, probably what you think is that the U.S. went to war after Japan attacked Pearl Harbor on December 7th, 1941, right? That's the basic, you know, structure of the rendering that most people have in their heads.
And that's just not accurate.
Well, but hold on. The whole point was...
No, wait, Michael. The whole point here, because this is why the initial comparison was drawn.
Hold on what?
Hold on. Let's like focus on the point, which is whether or not our intervention is good. In World War II, most people, everyone except the Nazis really, say, yes, And now, today, most people, except for some groups, say yes with Ukraine. So do you think our intervention in World War II was good or not? I recognize the historical...
It's historically inaccurate that everybody except the Nazis thinks
Michael,
that U.S. intervention in World War II was just universally good.
Time I've asked you.
Prominent socialist in the United States.
It's a yes,
in
no.
The early
Michael,
to mid 20th century
yes,
disagrees with that.
No question. Please just answer.
No,
Do you think the U.S. should have intervened? No, this isn't me being combative. Like you are very actively avoiding this question.
Wait.
We're talking. But what is the point going to be a yes/no answer to the question?
The point is that given that massive campaign of state deception that was fundamental to the means by which the U.S. entered the war, I'm saying that fact means that a binary yes or no answer, that fact explains or helps explain why I'm not willing to say just a flat yes to your question to me, because that would necessitate saying that yes, it's just absolutely morally good for the government to undertake an extensive, protracted campaign of
Michael,
deception to bring a country to war. And I don't tend to endorse that.
No, it isn't. You can say, I think it's good that we intervened, but I disagree with some things we did. You can say, overall, I think our intervention in World War II was a good thing, but I don't agree with all the behaviors our government engaged in. That is not only is that a reasonable position to take, it's mine, but also it's like the way a normal person would think about it. Nobody would think, because I agree with the U.S. intervening in World War II, I'm therefore endorsing every single thing the government did over that time
period. Just curiosity, though. I mean, just stipulated that I'm basically right in explaining this deception campaign, and you don't have to take my word for it.
Nobody here is talking about a deception campaign. We're talking about whether the intervention was justified.
How do you view that in moral terms?
I'm talking about the intervention as a whole.
No, but the state deception.
No.
How do you view that?
Wait, Michael. Yeah. We're talking about the moral value of intervening to fight the Nazis.
The moral value of state deception to bring a country into war.
Wait, bring a country into war?
Intervention in World War II.
Whoa, I'm sorry. Do you think the U.S. started the war?
No. Here's what I'm saying.
But you're doing it right now. So this right here, it's wait, Michael. This is why, because I called you a weasel the last time we talked, and nothing has really changed. You deny. Wait. You deny the parallel between the World War II intervention and today, but what you're trying to do is imply that parallel. What you're doing right now is going like, well, how can we really say intervention is good or not when there's all this deception behind the line?
Hold on a second. I'm not denying that any parallel could reasonably be drawn. There actually are some potentially plausible parallels. The parallel or the analogy that I am rejecting is the importation of the moral valence of U.S. intervention into World War II, as though it's just this paradigmatic example of absolute goodness into present day. That's what
nobody is talking about.
So, Michael,
you're doing it again. Nobody is talking about intervention in World War II as a paradigmatic virtue of moral goodness. We're just talking about whether it was... I am talking about whether it was good generally or bad generally. That if you could flip the on-off switch on U.S. military intervention in World War II, would the world be better if we hadn't done it? Not was everything we did during it good. I mean, I'm glad we went and fought the Nazis. Even if the government lied, I'm glad we went and fought the Nazis. Even if the government lied. Oh, if the then the government, if the government lied.
That's where you and I differ. Because if the government lies, or I don't even use the word lie because it's sort of excessively.
So wait, the government lies, so you should let the Nazis win?
If the government undertakes a sprawling campaign of deception to bring a country or bring the United States into a war, entry into which, by the way, was largely opposed.
But they declared war on us.
And then I'm not willing to just give a yes or no, binary, morally absolute endorsement to that practice.
Nobody's doing that, and nobody's talking about this.
But also,
they declared war on us.
Do effectively do
Michael,
that because
Michael, you're talking to me. Okay?
Right.
So if you're not willing to directly answer whether stopping the Nazis was a good or a bad thing, we can move on to other talking points. But this, like, some of the assumptions you're making here are delusional. Like, supporting the intervention means that you're
substantiated by
Michael,
the factual historical record.
Michael, nobody here is claiming that if an intervention was good, that necessarily means that everything the government did leading up to it was good. Nobody's even thinking
state
that.
deception in particular. So that, let's say it did happen in World War II. Let's just stipulate that.
You realize they declared war on us, right?
Sorry?
They declared war on us. You realize that, right?
Who did?
Japan and Germany?
Yeah, the whole point of what I'm getting at here is that U.S. intervention into World War II, and maybe you should familiarize yourself with the record. It's pretty illuminating. It was well underway before that, months and months and months, at least before those formal declarations of war. If you're not familiar with that record, I'm happy to share the materials with you.
Michael,
you'll probably find it interesting.
Just say, what did we do? Like, we sold weapons? We're allowed to do that. That's not war.
I'll tell you a couple. I'll tell you a couple things we did. And here's a thing that we did that led none of this is fringe. This is what's so amazing about it. And what's so amazing why it's so omitted from the popular consciousness. Franklin Roosevelt secretly ordered the U.S. military occupation of Iceland and sending a expeditionary convoy into a German war zone. That military occupation, and I'm not even being using a pejorative to call it a military occupation. That's what the U.S. Navy classifies it as in its records. Pursuant to that occupation and pursuant to Lend-Lease, which had already been enacted in March, Roosevelt
how is that war?
Initiated naval warfare against Germany, thus bringing the U.S. into active combat with Germany for the first time. And again, this was well before the formal declarations of war that came in December.
First of all, how was that first one war? We have the right to move our troops over?
Well, the United States had never, in its entire history, sent U.S. military forces.
How is that? How is that joining the war? We wanted to protect shipping lanes.
Okay, so if a U.S. Navy vessel initiates an attack on an enemy navy,
so Iceland cooperated with us.
No, they didn't. Actually, they didn't. The British had initially occupied Iceland.
Yes,
and the U.S. took it for the British, and it was done under protest. And then once the U.S. got in, it's true that Iceland, sort of reconciled itself to the occupation, but it was not endorsed by Iceland ever.
Moving some troops over to Iceland with the cooperation of Iceland.
An expeditionary convoy into a German war zone.
Michael, as is your goal, mind you, we are 50 points away from the main point, and as as I expected, this is a nothing burger. Moving troops to a neutral island is not beginning the war. And even if this was the case, this has nothing to do with intervention to stop the Nazis.
The New York Times
Michael, I am unwilling. Wait, Michael. If you can't answer basic yes/no questions, and everything is going to be this infinite fractal tree where you try to convince me that intervention was implicitly bad by misrepresenting history.
I don't have to choose between
why don't we talk about the modern day? If we are incapable of engaging in sort of associated discourse, then let's talk directly. Do you think Russia should have invaded Ukraine?
No, you brought up Iceland. I have to just quickly finish the point. You may not be aware of the historical record, which
I'm aware
is fine.
of everything.
People are not. Okay, are you aware then that on the orders of Franklin Roosevelt, starting in September of 1941 into October, 3 incidents of naval warfare were initiated by the United States against Germany in the waters around Iceland, where Roosevelt had sent secretly a military occupation force, thus initiating active warfare.
You mean in the waters? You mean in the waters of Iceland, where German vessels were trespassing?
Well, whether they were of course they were trespassing. It was an active war zone. That's the whole point.
Okay, so no, it's not us initiating when they go over to a neutral country. And Michael, I'm not interested in this World War II revisionism.
It's an attack against Ship 2. If Ship 1 is part of a navy that goes halfway around the world and then initiates an attack on Ship 2, that's an initiation of warfare.
They didn't go halfway around the world. It was Iceland that cooperated with us. Iceland was a neutral country. We had troops stationed there.
How far is it from New York to Iceland?
Michael, We had permission to be there. They entered Iceland's waters.
No, that's wrong.
It seems like a skill issue. They should have
There was
not
no
done
permission
that.
to be. I mean,
This is
be there. I mean,
I don't
you
understand what the purpose of this revisionism is outside of Nazi
It's not
apologia.
revisionism.
Here,
These are basic facts.
let's move to the current day. We're racing ahead.
That people toss around when they can't reckon with the actual record.
We're racing ahead 80 years.
We're
racing ahead 80 years, okay? So
let's race
Russia
80 years.
invades Ukraine. I think it's bad that they did that.
All right,
Hey, to be fair, we've reached the point of the convo where you're literally going like whenever I'm talking. So there's not actually a point in this conversation.